Hi, it's V from Crafting Daily Dose. I have another alternative for you for the January 2021 paper pumpkin called Sending Hearts. Now, obviously, this is meant to be sort of a Valentine's theme, but there is another important holiday that happens this February, and that is Lunar New Year. Traditionally, people give monetary gifts in lucky envelopes, but I thought that instead of a lucky envelope, it would be more fun to have a magic wallet, because what could be luckier than having a magic wallet? The way that this works is that you slide your money in underneath the ribbon on one side, and then when you close it and open it back up, it's transferred to the other side. You could probably do that all day. But first, you'd have to make it. So let's go ahead and get started. For this part, I have 2 pieces of Poppy Parade cardstock that are cut to the same dimensions. They are 2 3/4 by 4 inches. And I've chosen to use the large flower cluster from the Forever Blossom set to create an image on the front. Because it's large and pretty detailed, I'm going to get my Stamparatus so that I can make sure to get a good impression. Now, ordinarily, if I'm using my Stamparatus platform, I would put the piece of paper into the corner like this. But the stamp that I've chosen is made out of rubber, and so it's got some thickness to it. And I find sometimes that if you've got a rubber stamp and it's just way too close to this edge, it can be a little bit harder to get an impression further away from the edge just because this hits up too quickly. So I'm just going to scooch my paper out by about 1 inch and use my magnet to make sure that it stays in place. I'm going to decide how I want to have this flower cluster. I think like this. Okay, once I have my stamp in position, I'm going to close the cover down onto it so that it will stick to the cover. I'm going to use an anti-static powder tool and then ink up my stamp with Versamark. Press down. And I know it's hard to see on camera, but that looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to repeat with my other piece as well. I have my pieces stamped, and now I'm going to emboss them. I have this little coffee filter there just to catch any excess. I keep my embossing powders in a little container, and a friend had recommended to me to use these little spoons, kind of like the tasting spoons that you might find at an ice cream shop. I think that that works pretty well. I try to shake off as much excess as I can back into the container. Missed a spot up here. The coffee filter is just another layer of protection so it doesn't get everywhere. I also use a clean dry brush to brush off any extras. I'm ready to emboss, and I usually like to preheat my tool for a little bit. I usually like to start by heating the embossing powder from the bottom first. And then from the top. Once we're done, we'll move on to the next part. I had cut apart one of the Poppy Parade card bases for the last paper pumpkin alternative that I made, so I have this piece left over that is just a half. I'm going to take this piece and trim it down. I want the new width of this piece to be 4 inches. So I'm going to put this down at 4 inches. So we're just taking off 1/4 of an inch here. And then along the long side, I'm going to trim it down by half. The original length here is 5.5 inches, so we are going to trim at 2 3/4. So now you've got 2 pieces. Take the pieces that you've cut and turn them over. We're going to make some marks on them. On one of the pieces, and it doesn't matter which one, we're going to make a mark at 1 inch along the side. And if you're using this kind of grid paper on your work surface, each one of these squares represents 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to mark off 4 squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, and make a mark. 4 squares here, and make a mark. And then again on the other side. On the other piece, I'm going to do a little bit less. So 3.5 squares, which represents 7/8 of an inch. It doesn't have to be exact, just estimating here. 3.5. 1, 2, 3.5. 1, 2, 3.5. Now go back to the one where we marked 1 inch. We're going to put some tear and tape over those markings, and I'm putting in maybe like a 1 inch strip. Now I have 4 pieces of ribbon that's cut from the kit. Each of these is 6 inches. I'm going to lay my first piece across this black mark, and I'm going to do it at an angle like this. I'm going to wrap it around to form a diagonal and bring it to the other black mark in the opposite corner. I'm going to flip it because it's easier for me to work this way. I'm going to take a second ribbon, lay it down, crisscross it across the front, and come back to this other black mark. Okay, so this is what we have. I'm going to flip it over, make sure that I like the way it looks from the front as well, and then set this down. Now I'm going to put tear and tape on these 4 marks on the second piece. Now for this one, I'm going to take a piece of ribbon and I'm just going to lay it straight horizontally and wrap it around the front and meet it to the other black mark. So it's just a straight line across. Adjust this angle a little bit. Okay. And then one last piece of ribbon. Once I've done that, I'm going to lay my card pieces side by side, and I'm going to start transferring some of these ribbon ends. So this one had been placed down like that. I placed these very loosely so that they could still be adjusted at this point. I'm going to pop that one up, pop this one up, and they're going to switch pieces. So basically my straight one is now going to be connected to the left side, and it's going to be just above that black line, and my diagonal one is now going to be transferred over to the right hand piece. So it looks like that. Okay, we're going to do the same thing over here. We're going to lift these up. Going to transfer the straight one over to the left and the diagonal one over to the right. So now this is what you have. Remember the panels that we had embossed? Now we're going to put them on. So I'm going to turn this over, put on some Stampin' Seal, and I'm being pretty generous with adhesive because I want to make sure that everything ends up staying in place. I'm going to line this up with one of the panels that we have. And then I put adhesive on the other panel and I'm putting it down, being careful to make sure that they don't overlap one another. So once that's done, you can fold your wallet like this. And then when you are ready to open it, I told you it was a magic wallet. Pretty fun, right? I hope that you've enjoyed this dose of creativity and that you'll join me the next time. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.